Hello, friends, and welcome to Empty Cloud Monastery's YouTube channel. Here for another live Sutta discussion and live stream with the monks here. So, hello to everyone who might be joining in online. Apologies for being a few minutes late. I see hellos from Anjali, from Rebecca and Maria, and greetings from Madeline and Sean. So, good morning to all of you, and good morning to anyone else who might be watching this video either live or later on. Hope you're having a good day. And Gregory as well joining. And today's sutta is called the Nissaraniya Sutta, the elements of escape, as Bhante Sujato translates it. And so if you'd like to, you can find this sutta in the description of the video, it should be. And hello from Meredith. And so we can go ahead and just get started right away. I'll render homage to the Buddha, our teacher, and the reason why we have these teachings to discuss and practice today. And then we can go ahead and look at the sutta. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang saranang gacchami. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is the Nissaraniya Sutta. And so I'll go ahead and begin reading. Reading from Bhante Sujato's translation with some slight edits as we go. The Buddha says, Mendicants, there are these 6 elements of escape. What 6? Take a mendicant who says that they've developed the heart's release by love. They've cultivated it, made it their vehicle and their basis, kept it up, consolidated it, and properly implemented it. Yet somehow, they say that ill will still occupies their mind. They should be told, not so, Venerable. Don't say that. Don't misrepresent the Buddha, for misrepresentation of the Buddha is not good, and the Buddha would not say that. It's impossible, Reverend, it cannot happen that the heart's release by love has been developed and properly implemented, yet somehow ill will still occupies the mind. For it is the heart's release by love that is the escape from ill will. Okay, so you can see there that I'll pause for a moment because we have this word elements of escape, right? There are 6 elements of escape. And then that might sound a bit confusing, right? What do we mean by element of escape? And so actually you can see from the context, it really doesn't, the meaning should be relatively clear when we saw the first passage here. So the Pali word for element is dhatu. And it's kind of a complex word. It can be used in many different ways. But the basic sense of dhatu is like the word element in English, it means a piece of something, like a component of something. So if you take apart a water bottle, you say a water bottle has many different elements. It has a lid, and it has the casing, and it has maybe a decoration on it. So those are all different elements that compose a water bottle. Or you might say like, oh, a body, many elements. So the body has organs, or the body has the 6 elements of earth, water, fire, wind, and space and consciousness. So elements, the word dhatu, it really just means like a component. It means a piece, or as we say, an element of something. So when the Buddha is saying there's these 6 elements of escape, I think what he's pointing to is that when we talk about escaping, there's kind of like 6. You can talk about that into 6 different types, like 6 different pieces of that. So, when we say, oh, the escape from something, well, escape from what, right? Are you running out of a burning building? So the word escape in Buddhism has a specific meaning. So I think what the Buddha is saying here is that the 6 elements of escape are, these are six kind of pieces of that, 6 sort of elements of what we're talking about when we say the escape. And the word for escape is nisadana, as we've hinted at with the name of the sutta. And you might know this from the scheme of the gratification, the drawback, and the escape, right? It might also be called the, what else would you call it? The benefit, the danger, and the way out, right? So this is like you enter into a very beautiful shop, and it has lovely different items and furniture and all kinds of different goodies for the house. And so there's a gratification. It's very enticing, right? I mean, for some people, that would be an enticing store. And then you notice, however, that the prices are very, very high. So then you start looking, where's the exit? I'm going to get out of here. So if you notice like a shopping mall, I remember learning that shopping malls are actually designed to draw your attention and stimulate you as much as possible. And so the goal of a shopping mall, the designer of the kind of inventor of them, their goal was so you go into the store, you go into the mall with a particular purpose, right? So maybe you're thinking like, oh, you want to get some shoes, or you want to get some, you want to go to this, and you have like a few stores that you want to stop by. So their goal was, in as little time as possible, we want to make them forget that, make them lose their mindfulness and totally forget why they went in there and just get completely absorbed into the shopping of the mall. So that's how they're actually designed. They make it so that so what does that mean, right? So that means that they're trying to design it. How can we make the gratification very, very evident, the most evident thing, and make the escape, make the exit sign, the least evident, right? So, yeah, and if you notice actually a shopping mall, I wasn't expecting to talk about malls today, but if you notice at a shopping mall, actually it's, they're so big and they have so many stores, they have very few exits, right? So you can almost think about it like it's designed to, once you go in there, you kind of have to go through many different stores and you see all the nice things and you have to walk a long time, sometimes go down to a different floor. And so it's really designed it's like a cage to make you see all the gratification. Like, I want this, I want this, I want this. And, very little drawback is they try to make it as little as possible, right? So you can get a sense of what is the gratification, the drawback, and the escape by just thinking, okay, a shopping mall. That's what it's like. So we tend to be living in a shopping mall of our mind, right? So we walk around and our mind is like the designer of the shopping mall. I can't remember his name, but that's what our mind is like. It's like, how can I make this, us, how can I make them see the gratification so I can get what I want as much as possible and try to hide all the drawbacks, all the high prices and the unhealthy food and the, low quality items. I'm going to hide that. And I'm just going to try to get them to see all the glittery, shiny, reflecting nice things, and then not going to show them the escape. So our mind is like that. It's like the designer of a shopping mall. And so the Buddha says, though, we should not be like that, right? We should actually be focusing on the escape. So most people, when they go to the mall, they go to the store, they're looking, where's the entrance, right? But the Buddha is like, before you even get in there, he wants you to look, where's the exit? So like, where it is, right? So if you're going in, then you think, okay, I'm about to go into this mall. I better check where the exit is before I go in. And then while you're going in, you have to reflect on the drawbacks, on the dangers. So that is what we should do all the time, right? All the time. We have to remember, whenever we're getting involved in something, we try to remember this scheme of like, I need to be careful about this interaction, whether it's speaking or eating or being alone or being in company, whatever it is. We have to say, okay, my mind, it's going to want to find the sticky, juicy, yummy part. What Pali is called the asada. And it's like the taste, the savor of it, right? In Argentina, they have a food called asado. Asado is like a barbecue. So sometimes I think that asada, it's like the asado of the thing. It's like in Argentina, it's like the national food. So it's like, it's really like beloved. I know some people don't eat meat, but in Argentina, it's like considered It's the most delicious meal possible, basically. It's like just a bunch of meat grilled. And so the asada is like the juicy part of the experience. And then you have the adinava, that's the danger. And the Buddha says what this is like is, and then we'll get into the escape, the main part of the sutta. The Buddha says the danger is like if you had someone was very, very thirsty, so thirsty, had a long journey, finally get to a refuge, finally get to a safe place, and there's a beverage, a golden, juicy, sweet smelling, aromatic beverage, just perfect looking and smelling, that it seems it would quench their thirst. And so they see it and they want to drink that so bad. But someone tells them, be careful, sir, for that beverage is actually filled with deadly poison. If you drink that, you will certainly die or experience near deadly pains, deadly pain. And so if someone is really focused on, I just want to quench my thirst, or I just want the pleasant sensation, the pleasant feeling, my mind to be relieved of the stress, then they might forget, they might not focus on the drawback. They might even take the risk, right? But that's not what we should do, right? We should say, no, it's not worth it, right? That's too dangerous. So it's the same, the Buddha says, with sensual pleasures, with unwholesome mind states, right? With rebirth, with anything in the world that we get caught up, right? All the shiny, sparkly, pleasant things, and also all the ugly, hateable things that we want to indulge in our hatred for, right? So all of that, we have to see, okay, there is this gratification. Like with hatred, I'll give one more example of hatred, and then that will bring us right to our sutta. With hatred, the Buddha says that anger is like licking a honey tip, but the root is poison. Or it's like licking honey off of a knife. So it tastes so good, but it's actually cutting your tongue, right? And it's actually poisoning you. So anger, that's what but it has a honey tip. So anger is very sweet, right? Like righteous indignation, right? Being angry because we're right about it, or being angry because they deserve it, and so on. So anger can be very juicy, very tasty, but it's actually poisonous. It's bad. So that's the Buddha talking about the gratification and the danger, the drawback. And so what then is the response to that when you see that? So then that's the escape, right? So then you see, okay, it would be nice to get that beverage and quench my thirst, but it's really dangerous. So you avoid it. It would be nice to get the honey, but in order to get that, I'd have to lick the knife. So you avoid it. You escape from that scenario. It would be nice to go into the shopping mall and have a pretzel, but it's gonna make me lose my mindfulness and indulge. So you avoid it. So that's you see the gratification, but you notice that it's not worth it because of the danger, the drawback, and so you escape. Okay, so most of the time people are rotating between gratification and drawback and danger. So like they go for the gratification and then they get hit with the drawback, and then they try to remove the pain of the drawback by going to another gratification, right? So like, for example, with sensual pleasures, right? You focus on the indulgence of the sensual pleasure. So you go for the gratification, but then it's very fleeting. Then it leaves you feeling empty. It doesn't satisfy you. You have to do a lot of work for it. So then that's a lot of stress. So then you go for another one. You try to indulge in another sensual pleasure, but then that also has a drawback. So then you go for another one. So we're jumping between going for the gratification and then, experiencing the consequences of the danger. So then you jump back to another gratification. But instead, the Buddha says you should look for the escape, like try to get out of that whole scenario, try to jump off the line, right? So instead of going like one dimension back and forth, we need to try to go up, try to get out of there. That's the escape. Okay, so then what are these 6 elements, right? So the first one I've already read. So this is the Buddha says, take a mendicant. So, someone who says that they've developed the heart's release by love. What this is, metta ceto vimutti, right? I'm sure you've all heard of metta. Metta is love, unconditional love, or loving kindness, loving friendliness, as Bhante Gunaratana says. And so metta is this gentle, kind, loving wish that doesn't have favorites, right? And we are now in this sutta, we're going to be talking about the 4 Brahma Viharas. That's actually the main aspect of this sutta, which I felt was important. And so the 4 Brahma Viharas, right? The first is loving kindness. Bande Sujato just translates it simply as love. And this is in the Karaniya Metta Sutta, one of the most famous suttas on loving kindness. It says, Sukhino wa keimi no honto sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. So that is the kind of definition. So that means, may they be happy and may they be safe. May all beings be happy in themselves. So that's the 3 components of loving kindness: wishing happiness, wishing safety and protection, and finally wishing it to all beings impartially, right? So it's all kind of encapsulated in those 2 lines of the Metta Sutta. Sukhino wa, may they be happy. Keimi no, may they be safe. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta, may all beings be happy in themselves. So it's all beings, right? So this is why we say sometimes unconditional. And so it's the care, and the Buddha likens it to the ideal mother, right? The example of an ideal mother, right? And like we say that, maybe a mother, her son or her child is put in prison, and she would still think, my son is the best one in there, right? So the ideal mother loves the son no matter what, right? Even the child, I should say. Then probably the word is it's a gendered language, so it's just a child. But the mother would love a child, right? So no matter what. And although that doesn't mean that she doesn't discipline the children, right? Like, loving someone doesn't mean just giving them what they want all the time, right? That would actually not be very compassionate towards the children, because it would cause problems later on. So with loving kindness, with metta, we're not talking about like just letting people do whatever they want, but we're talking about having a caring heart. We're talking about having a loving heart, wanting everyone to be happy, not being angry, not being irritated, right? And when we have irritation in our mind, it's like we are walking around a room and there's sharp, pointy spikes and rocks all over the floor. So wherever we go, our mind is agitated and in pain. So anger is actually very uncomfortable, right? Irritation is very uncomfortable. And you might know that if you practice meditation and you focus on, tensing up and really struggling, and you have a lot of pain in your body, and it just gets worse and worse because you get irritated, and then you get more tense, and you get more irritated, and you get restless, and you get bored, and you're in pain. So if you do meditation like that, right, irritation meditation, rather than loving kindness meditation, not being gentle to your body and being gentle to your mind, then it's a lot of suffering. And so it's the same, though, actually, when we're just going about our day, right? It's not just when we're meditating that, irritation is uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like that. Like Ajahn Chah, when he was a very young monk, or at least a beginning meditator, and he said that he had an insight, and he noticed that whenever he was meditating, he was very, very agitated. And then whenever he wasn't meditating, he was very calm. So it seems like meditation makes you agitated. But of course, that's not true, right? It's not the meditation, it's the hindrances. It's the opposite of meditating. So of course, he later realized that. And of course, he went on to become a very famous meditation monk. So when we meditate, sometimes it becomes more apparent to us the drawbacks of irritation. And then we think that, normal life, it's not like that. Just meditation is painful. Actually, meditation is just showing you how painful it is to have hindrances in the mind. It's just usually we're focusing, like I said, on the gratification, not on the drawback. But it's very uncomfortable to have desire and irritation, ill will. And, restlessness, sleepiness, dullness, and doubt. It's very uncomfortable to have those in the mind. Very, very uncomfortable, right? So why do people steal? Because the agitation, the stress of desire is so strong that it's so uncomfortable that they can't help themselves but relieve it by acting unwholesome, unwholesome way, right? A bad way. Why do people kill? Why do people commit sexual misconduct? Why do people do any break the precepts? It's because it's uncomfortable to have those desires and not be able to tame your mind, right? So actually, the loving kindness is really, it's a beautiful mind state. It's a comfortable mind state. So the escape from ill will, we have to see, there's a danger in ill will. There's a danger in being angry, irritated, frustrated, grumpy, moody, right? We don't want to be grumpy. We want to be loving. And so the Buddha says that loving kindness is the escape from ill will. That's the way out. And what he's saying here is, he's phrasing it in an interesting way, but he's saying that imagine a monk, basically, if they say that they have developed very deep, profound loving kindness meditation, but they still say that they have ill will in their mind, then the Buddha is saying you should tell them that that's not, then they haven't actually developed loving kindness meditation to the full extent, because it's not possible to have ill will, right? But so what that means is, anger and loving kindness, they're opposite. So it's not possible to have anger and have loving kindness. And that's how you can actually know that when you're doing loving kindness meditation, and maybe you're doing loving kindness meditation, like, may everyone be happy, may everyone be peaceful, sending loving kindness, and then you hear people making noises, or you get an irritating sensation. You're like, God, it's just distracting my meditation. I can't do my loving kindness meditation. So you start, get irritated, like that. These people are disturbing, right? So actually, that's a sign that the loving kindness meditation has not reached a deep level yet, right? So what the Buddha is saying is, don't say that you've perfected loving kindness if you still get angry with the loving kindness. That means it's not actually fully there. So that means that loving kindness is the way out. So if you have loving kindness to that extent, you won't have irritation. So instead of walking around in the room with spiky, sharp rocks on the floor, it'll be like walking on soft clouds with beautiful tapestry, right? Everything will be much more beautiful, because when your mind is beautiful, then your experience of the world is reflected in that, right? Like, similar to the Buddha saying that loving kindness is exemplified by a mother, loving her child. Well, also there's some famous sayings, like a little bit crude, but sayings like, only a mother would find the child beautiful. Like, the child is only beautiful in the eyes of the mother, right? So that's also actually pointing to the same idea, that a mother's love, or really just loving kindness, right? It's talking about loving kindness. It makes everything more beautiful, right? If you really love someone, if you really care for them, then you find the beauty in them. And the Buddha actually says that the consequences of being angry and grumpy and irritated is, the karma, the consequence of that karma is being ugly. And so, also one of the benefits of loving kindness is that your complexion will be very bright. So beautiful, right? So loving kindness makes you beautiful. It's an inner beauty. It's like putting jewelry on your heart and making it very beautiful, very radiant and loving and kind, right? And it also makes the world more beautiful, more nice, more pleasing, less spiky and less irritating. And so loving kindness is the escape. It's the opposite of ill will. And then the Buddha says, take another mendicant who says that they've developed the heart's release by compassion. They've cultivated it, made it their vehicle and their basis, kept it up, consolidated it, and properly implemented it. Yet somehow they say the thought of harming still occupies their mind. They should be told, not so, Venerable, for it is the heart's release by compassion that is the escape from thoughts of harming. Okay, so this is the next one, compassion. And so moving on, as I mentioned, these are the 4 Brahma Viharas. Brahma is a divinity, right? It's a God. And Vihara is a state of abiding. It's a way of living, and it also can refer to meditation. And so the Buddha there is talking about, living with Brahma, living as if in heaven, living as if divine. So on earth, right, with these mind states, because the mind states of the Brahma deities, is the base level is equal to these you could say wavelengths, right? These good vibes, right? These very pleasant, loving intentions and compassionate intentions. All the 4 Brahma Viharas, which we'll discuss, those are the base level of the Brahma deities. And so the Brahma Viharas are like abiding in that state. It's like as if you're in heaven on earth. And I talked about that. We're talking about how the world becomes more beautiful. Your mind is more beautiful. And so the next one is compassion. And I'll say at this time that I like to say that the Brahma Viharas are the without a why meditation. So without a why, meaning that metta is love without a why, without a reason, right? And compassion, the Brahma Vihara's compassion is compassion without a why. So what does that mean, right? Well, usually you might say, oh, I love them because they're in my family. Or I love them because they helped me so much. I'm so grateful to them. Or I love them because they gave me these gifts. Or I love them because of how they look. Or I love them because of their hobbies. And so I love them because they make a good impression on me, because they're nice to me. So it's all with a why, right? You can kind of find like, oh, there's a reason that my mind, it's kind of conditional, right? Maybe if they changed, if they started becoming cruel and nasty and mean and different and changing their attitude and their behaviors, then maybe you wouldn't love them anymore. So that's love with a why. It has some reasons. It has some conditions. So our heart has a little contract in there, which we signed with ourselves. It says, love them to the extent that ... and then you sign right on there. And we just consent to that automatically. We have these contracts, and every little person, we have a contract like, okay, I'll be nice to you to this extent and for these reasons and under these conditions, and for you to these conditions and that. And so it's very conditional. It's love with a why. But the ideal of loving kindness, what the Buddha calls metta ceto vimukti, when the heart, if you develop your heart to be completely full, completely released from all ill will through loving kindness, then it should be unconditional, right? There's no reason. Like, why do you love that person? They're horrible, they're mean, they're cruel, they're nasty, they have bad habits, they're lazy. And there's no reason other than loving kindness, right? So it is divine and vast, expansive. The Buddha says abundant, exalted, immeasurable for all 4 Brahma Viharas. So it's big, it's not measurable, right? The other word for the Brahma Viharas are called the appamanya. That means immeasurables. You can't measure them, you can't limit them. You can't say this degree, that percent. It's immeasurable. And so that's why whenever there's anger or irritation, that's like you're putting a border on the mind. You can measure the mind, right? You can say, oh, there it is. Found it. It's like you have a game, right? Whack-a-mole. And when the moles come up, then you pop the moles. So that's like our mind. When our mind gets irritated, it's like it starts showing itself. And then right there, that's where you can get hit. That's where you can attach and cling and get upset and get tight. But if the mind is loving and expansive, then it becomes more like space. It becomes more vast. It becomes less affected. So the immeasurables should have that quality to them when they're perfected. That's why the Buddha is saying it's not possible for someone who has developed the heart's release by love, the heart's release of loving kindness. It's not possible for ill will to occupy their mind in that state, right? And likewise in compassion. The compassion, he says, is the escape of thoughts of harming. So karuna is the word for compassion. And as you can see then, so compassion is the opposite of harming, right? So what is compassion, right? It's wanting beings not to suffer. So what is harming, right? What is the thought of harming? It's a thought of wanting a being to suffer, right? Like example of this is revenge, right? Revenge is like you want to harm or cause stress and suffering to someone because of what they've done, or spite or cruelty, right? Like indulging in the pain of other beings, right? So bullying, right? So that's all wanting beings to suffer, right? Being nasty. Why? Because it's different from it's different from ill will, I should say, because ill will, the way that I prefer to relate to this is that it's like an irritation, right? It's like when the mind is resisting, it's pushing back. So when you get angry about a scenario, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to cause people to suffer, right? Like you don't necessarily want to to harm them, like to bully them, but you might just be really angry or just very irritated or getting frustrated, like so it's just getting kind of annoying, an irritation, and it can go from mild irritation, mild grumpiness, all the way up to like pure hatred. So it's a little bit different, though. It's related, of course, right? Because of irritation, you might start wanting to harm, but it's not exactly the same. It's possible to be irritated but not want people to suffer. You just want it to go to, you want it to go away. It's like a pushing away. Harming is like even worse. It's not just pushing away, but it's like actually pushing and harming. You want it to actually, you want to make the person suffer. You want to make it bad for them. So like I said, revenge. So maybe someone makes you suffer, so then you want to make them suffer. So that is harming. So compassion, what is compassion then? Compassion is, the Brahma-vihara is without a why, without a reason, without a condition, without a limit, wanting beings to be free of suffering, wanting beings to be relieved of their pain, wanting to remove the pain of sentient beings. So you might, someone hurt you, and instead of thinking that you want to hurt them, you think, oh, I want them to be free of their suffering. I want to help them be free of suffering. And instead of getting spiteful, you think, oh, I want to go out of my way to help them. I want to do something nice to them. So compassion is like a kind, ideal doctor, right? The Buddha is often listed as an example of compassion, because the Buddha for 45 years, so some 45 odd years, he gave up so much of his time to teach, sentient beings, humans and devas, and he didn't need to do that, right? And so it said that the Dhamma is the supreme medicine. It's the best medicine. It's the most nourishing, pain-soothing, relieving medicine. And the Buddha says, drink of this, drink of this. So compassion is this ideal doctor who wants to help relieve the pain of sentient beings and doesn't want to harm them. So what does a doctor do? Imagine a patient comes in and that person, the doctor knows them and they're a really mean person. Or a patient comes in and they're really nice to the doctor. Or a patient comes in and they murdered the doctor's child. Compassion says, there's no reason, there's no why, there's no condition other than may you be free of suffering. And it helps all the patients equally. It cares for all the patients equally, right? So compassion is caring, wanting beings to be free of their suffering without a why. And compassion evolves from loving kindness. So loving kindness is the beginning, because when you want beings to be happy and safe, then you also will want to relieve them of their suffering, right? So again, sometimes a mother will nurse the children, right? Or a father, or any parent who has loving kindness, they love the children. So then when the children are suffering, they nurse the children, they help them. But ideally, we don't get caught up in the suffering, right? We don't get sad ourselves, because compassion and loving kindness, all of them, they require equanimity. And we'll get to that as the last one. Equanimity is like a consistent through line. It's like a consistent, enduring background quality to all the Brahma-viharas, to all the Appamanya, the immeasurables, the divine abidings. Because in order to love without a reason, you have to be impartial. You have to have a balanced mind. You have to not be disturbed by getting agitated at some and getting happy at others. And so you have to have equanimity. You have to have balance. And same with compassion, like I mentioned with the doctor, right? a patient comes in, the doctor, has a bad history with them. So the ideal doctor does not treat them differently, does not want them to suffer more, does not give them less treatment, does not prioritize them less, but helps them equally. Just like the Buddha, right? He taught many different beings. Now, of course, you might have to prioritize your time and so on, but your attitude should be one of wanting all beings to be free of suffering. And so compassion, like I mentioned, it evolves. So, when you want beings to be happy, then when they're suffering, you want them to be relieved of suffering. It's natural. But if you start with the suffering, sometimes you might get caught up, too much. So that's why it's good to start often, it can be good to start with loving kindness, because with loving kindness, you're not actually focusing on suffering. You're just focusing on may everyone be happy, on the warm, fuzzy, loving, caring type of thing, right? And then you can start to open up to that suffering because your heart is more free of the resistance to pain, right? That anger, that resistance. So when you're less resistant, then you can open up to the suffering and want to relieve it, not want to harm, right? But if you still have some resistance, you still have some irritation, it's very easy for that to then turn into thoughts of harming, like I mentioned, right? So maybe at first you get a little bit annoyed with someone, and then you start thinking about yelling at them, then you start thinking about hitting them, right? So it can just escalate if it's uncontrolled, and that's how you get crimes. So irritation is the kind of seed of harming, and loving kindness is the seed that grows into compassion. It grows into wanting to relieve beings of their suffering. Okay, and so what is the third Brahmavihara? What is the third one? No cheating. The Buddha says, take another mendicant who says that they've developed the heart's release by rejoicing. They say they've cultivated it, made it their vehicle and their basis, kept it up, consolidated it, and properly implemented it, yet somehow discontent still occupies their mind. They should be told, not so, Venerable, for it is the heart's release by rejoicing that is the escape from discontent. So the third one is rejoicing, mudita, right? And you might know this related form of this word when we say anumodana, right? We say sadhu anumodana. That means I rejoice with you. I'm rejoicing along with something that you've done. Like someone gives a gift, you say, anumodana, sadhu. So that means rejoicing. I'm rejoicing in that goodness and excellent, wonderful. Or when someone does a good deed, right? Or when someone says something that's, helpful or wise or kind, you can say anumodana, you rejoice. And this is actually a Dharma practice. This is actually a practice that you can do of always rejoicing. So when we rejoice in goodness, when we rejoice in the beauty of other people, when we rejoice in the good deeds of others, the good fortune and the blessings of others, when we're happy for people, right? So mudita, the basic sense of it is being happy for someone, right? When you're happy for everyone without a why, without a reason. Happy for everyone without a condition. That's the heart's release by rejoicing. So, you might say, I'm so happy for my children that they got into college and that they have a nice job, or I'm so happy that they're getting married, and I'm so happy that my friends are, doing well, and that my friends are treating me nicely, but I'm not happy for that other person because I'm jealous of them. I'm not happy for my coworker that got this, they're getting better treatment than me and they're having a better paycheck and so on. So that is conditional rejoicing, right? Conditional happiness for people. Mudita is being happy for everyone, right? So your enemy gets we shouldn't have enemies, but if your enemy gets a nice brand new car, the one that you wanted, you should, I'm so happy for you. Or you're waiting in line at lunch and someone takes the last thing that you wanted, right? So you think, I'm so happy for them. I'm so happy that they got that food. I'm so happy for them, right? Instead of thinking, I wish I had that. I'm not happy with what I have. I'm not happy with, my state. So that's why the Buddha says that the opposite, the escape from discontent, So the opposite of discontent and the escape from discontent is rejoicing, being happy for people, right? So you might say, oh, I'm not content with my house. I'm not content with my meditation. I'm not content with my mind states. I'm not content with my children. I'm not content with my family. I'm not content with this and that. And mudita says, I'm happy for my house. I'm happy for what I have. I'm happy. I'm rejoicing in all the goodness. I'm grateful. I'm happy for my children. I'm happy for my friends. I'm happy for my enemies. I'm happy for everyone. That's what we want to develop, right? So being happy, rejoicing in everything. Being happy for people, not necessarily rejoicing in unwholesome things, but you're happy for people. And one way you can relate to this is when you see someone, and a mudita is like when you see someone, like you see a friend after a long time, maybe you run into them at the grocery store or you run into them somewhere and you're like, oh, hey, it's so nice to see you. And you're so happy for them. Like, oh, I'm so happy that you're here. It's wonderful that you're here. You're just rejoicing in their existence. Right? You're just rejoicing like, oh, I'm so happy. You make me so happy, right? So that's rejoicing. That's mudita. Another example of this, the Buddha says, is when you're living in community, if you live with mudita, then it will solve a lot of communal harmony issues, right? So, for example, what's another example of discontent? Maybe the other people in the house aren't doing the dishes, right? Or they're not doing the cleaning. They're not helping enough with the chores, or they're not being nice and polite. The Buddha says, monks, you should be like a newlywed wife, right? So we should be like newlyweds to one another. Why? Well, because in ancient India, and this is still relevant to people who aren't in this kind of context, and also today in many cultures, but in ancient India, when someone got married, when the wife was married, she would often go to live in her husband's house, right? So she would become part of the husband's family. So then her mother-in-law is going to be living in there, right? Her mother-in-law might be in the house, or she's kind of part of the mother-in-law's family. So when the newlywed first moves in, she, helps her husband and is very mindful around the mother and treats her nicely and gives her all kinds of gifts. And she's very forgiving and so on. But maybe after a little while, then it starts not going so well because she gets used to it. And then she is complaining, discontent with all the problems in the mother-in-law and all the problems in the husband and all the problems in the house. And she starts getting quickly angry, quickly irritated, quick to be rebellious and so on. So we are like that with everyone, right? we at first, maybe you're very happy and you're very, you're living in harmony with people and you're rejoicing. Oh, they're so wonderful and so great. But then after a while you start thinking, oh, I'm not happy about this and they could do better in that. And they have this bad habit and that bad habit and this thing that they should fix. And I'm not happy with this about that place. And so we start finding all the reasons in the world to be discontent. And like I said, like the shopping mall, right? Our mind is like the designer of a shopping mall. It wants us to, as soon as we enter, as quick as possible, forget all of our plans, all of our practice, and just focus on the shiny gratification, get completely absorbed in that. So very quickly, our mind, it very quickly starts running into all the problems of the world, all the things we can complain about, all the things that not to be happy, all the reasons to be jealous, all the reasons to be envious, right? But mudita makes us content if we practice it properly. So like I said, when someone gets something, you think, I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy that you had that nice experience. So maybe you're another example of mudita. You're sitting at home, and nowadays we have what's called FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. So you go on social media and you see all the fun, beautiful things that people are doing and all the, the partners and the boats and the yachts and the vacations and the homes and the children and the everything is so wonderful and beautiful. And then you look around and you're thinking, oh, not me. I don't have any of that. Oh, I wish I was doing that. And so you have FOMO, fear of missing out, right? You're jealous, you're discontent. It feels bad, right? So mudita is the opposite of that. So imagine you see all those wonderful things And you think, oh, sadhu, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. And oh, I'm so happy for you. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm so happy for you. And so who's the first person to benefit? You are, right? They might not even know you're happy for them. You benefit though, because then actually you become happy. So see, discontent, it's in the mind. And I like to talk about this sometimes in terms of poverty. Poverty, real poverty, what it is, of course, there is external poverty, but another way of talking about poverty is internal poverty. And this is when you look around at the world and you say, I don't have what I should. I don't have as much as I should have, right? And you can see how this is really conditioned, right? Because, for example, before so many cultures were, before they were colonized, you might have had people living in, huts made of mud and dirt, and huts with, thatched roofs, and they cooked food on a fire, and they went, foraging to get their food. And so that was normal, for many people. That was just normal. And you might even have very wealthy, influential, powerful figures in the villages, in the cities, in the towns. They have, really, they're considered very luxurious, very wealthy, very powerful, wonderful, a very meritorious place. And then, people come in, they colonize the place, they colonize the area, and now those people are considered to be living in abject poverty, absolute dire conditions. You don't have a smartphone, you don't have a oven, you don't have suits and ties and tuxedos and hats and caps and feathers and coffee. So actually, they had coffee. Coffee was, but so you see, actually, then the people in those scenarios, then they start feeling like, oh yeah, I am poor, I am disadvantaged, I don't have what I should. So they start becoming discontent, right? So you can see that actually poverty is when we tell ourselves a story. Internal poverty. Of course, there is such a thing as, not having enough external conditions. I'm not trying to deny that. But internally, no matter what our conditions are, we don't have to feel poor. We don't have to feel the negative type of poor where we think, I don't have what I should, what I deserve, what I want, I'm disadvantaged. That's a form of discontent. Instead, you think, I'm so happy for what I have. And I'm so happy that they have all that stuff. And I'm so happy that they have those beautiful mental qualities. I'm so happy that they have good meditation. And so when your meditation isn't going so well, you don't get discontent, like, oh, I wish it was better, and oh, it's not as good as it should be. But you think, I'm so happy that I'm meditating. I'm so happy for my meditation. It's wonderful. And I'm so happy that all those people had great meditation. I'm so happy that the Buddha was enlightened, instead of being discontent, like, oh, I'm not, So mudita is that rejoicing, that happiness. And I feel it's worth, talking about this to this extent, because mudita is so often the most neglected. It's like one of the Brahma Viharas that's pushed off in the corner, right? You have loving kindness and compassion, and then equanimity. And mudita is kind of like, yeah, maybe every now and then you can rejoice, but mudita should be unconditional. So it's not just like when someone's going through a nice time. It's not just rejoicing when someone gets something. It's just without a reason, without a condition, being happy for people and being happy for yourself as well. Remember that the Brahma Viharas apply to all beings, including yourself, right? Not like all beings except for me, but all beings. So that means you're also happy with what you have. You're happy for yourself. I'm so happy for myself, right? And then you won't be discontent. So it's as simple as that. It's not about what you have or don't have. It's not about what they have or don't have. It's just about rejoicing, being happy. And we're almost out of time, so I will cover the last Brahma Vihara in the sutta, and then we'll close. And then the Buddha says, take another mendicant who says that they've developed the heart's release by equanimity. They say they've cultivated it, made it their vehicle and their basis, kept it up, consolidated it, and properly implemented it. Yet somehow desire still occupies their mind. They should be told, not so, Venerable, for it is the heart's release by equanimity that is the escape from desire or from passion. The word is raga. Oops, sorry. Hello, Miguel. So raga, passion, desire. In Pali and in Sanskrit, I believe, it has a double meaning. It's a pun. Raga also means dye, as in like food coloring or dye for your clothing, right? So dye, color dye. And the Buddha says that when the mind is filled with raga, with passion and desire, it's like water, which has been very thoroughly filled with colored dye, so you can't see through it, right? Like you put a bunch of blue food coloring in there, so it's just a dark blue. You can't actually see in the water. This is like what we say wearing rose-colored glasses, right? When your glasses are colored with dye, everything looks rosy pink. And when they're colored with blue, everything looks blue. When they're colored with yellow, everything looks yellow. So raga, this desire, this passion, it gives us this favoritism. So, like I said, when you don't have equanimity, then you will have maybe love, but with a why. You might have compassion with a condition. You might have rejoicing with limits. So equanimity is what removes your desire from things. So like whether you have what you want or you don't have it, you be equanimous. Means you're happy just as you are. You're content just as you are. It's not a positive, it's positive, but it's not like an uplifting, like, yay, rejoicing, party, sadhu, anumodana. Equanimity should be more of an even, soothing, cool, balanced, equipoise. Right? Like a perfectly equanimous, balanced person, calm, undisturbed, like smooth water. So equanimity is the through line, the background quality that's necessary to balance out the Brahmaviharas. So equanimity with loving kindness should manifest as you don't have hatred towards some people and love towards others, but you want everyone to be happy. Equanimity and compassion means that when you encounter suffering, you are not getting mired in the suffering, not getting lost in the suffering, not wallowing in it, but you're equanimous, your mind is balanced. It doesn't have a strong desire like, oh, I wish this would be different, I wish it was different, I wish it was somehow, I wish it was other, but rather you are equanimous, but you also have compassion, a loving, soothing heart which wants to alleviate the suffering. Equanimity with rejoicing means that you don't get caught up in jealousy, right? So you don't rejoice like, oh, I'm so happy for you, but I wish I had that too. Oh, I'm so happy for them, but I don't have that. Oh, I'm so happy for what I have, but it could be better. So equanimity is, having a balanced mind that no matter who it is, no matter what it is, no matter how it is, no matter where it is, no matter why it is, you have loving kindness, compassion, and rejoicing. And so then you can extract that quality of equanimity, that balanced mind, and you can focus just on that, right? Just on cultivating a mind which is balanced, calm and cool, serene, still. So that is equanimity. And so the Buddha is saying it's not possible for someone to have a balanced mind, but be pushed and pulled by their passions and desires. It's not possible to have a clear, still water that's clouded with dye and color. So the mind, if it's clear, still and balanced, calm and serene, it won't be colored and filled with favoritism and moved by passion, because it's not possible. Equanimity is the opposite of that. So someone who gets very passionate, right, it means that their mind is very disturbed, right? It gets very emotional. Equanimity is like a balanced mind, an unaffected mind. So it's the opposite of passion. And so those, friends, are the 4 Brahmaviharas. Those are that's 4 out of 6. So we covered part of the sutta. That's 4 out of 6 escape, right? Ways of escaping, aspects of what we're talking about when we say escaping. So you can notice these drawbacks, the drawbacks of hatred, of cruelty, of discontent, and of passion, and you can cultivate these escapes. So this time we can say 3 sadhus to respect the sutta, and then I'll look and see if there's any questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, thank you, everyone. So let's see here. I think we have one question so far from Madeline, who says, any advice for sending metta to those leaders in the world who cause great suffering to others? Yeah, well, like I said, imagine the ideal mother, right? The ideal loving parent or grandparent even. And even if the child does something naughty, even if they're mean and cruel, they still love them and they say, oh, they want them to be happy. It doesn't mean they approve of their unwholesome behavior, but they don't start hating them, right? They love them and they want them to be happy. And so you just imagine that they're your grandchild. Imagine that they're your grandparents or that they're your children, right? And that you love them. And it's like, you know what? I don't approve of their behavior, but I still love them. I want them to be well and happy. And then the other reflection that's good briefly is to think that actually hatred is the root problem of these things. So maybe you think, oh, they cause suffering. They're so mean. They divide people. Why do they do that? Because of hatred. So if you had hatred, you would be doing the exact same thing, right? Whenever you're pointing, there's 3 fingers pointing back, right? So whenever we're saying all this hatred, all this division, but actually you're dividing in your mind. You're creating hatred. So imagine if no one had hatred, there wouldn't be these problems. So if those world leaders, if those people, if they didn't have any hatred, if they had loving kindness, they wouldn't be doing unskillful things. So what's the solution? Well, it's definitely not to add to the pile, add to the flames, throw more hatred in there. That's just going to make it worse. So we can also reflect like that. Like, wow, the problem is hatred. So the solution is not hatred. And the Buddha says, never is hate settled through hate. It is only settled through love. This is an eternal truth. So when one person gets angry and then another person gets angry, it doesn't make no anger, it makes double anger, right? If one person is hateful and causes suffering, and then other people get angry about that, it just causes more anger. So what causes war? When you have one angry party, and then you have another party who gets equally angry. Now there's tension, and now you might have a war on your hands. So loving kindness is always the answer. Metta is always the answer. We have in the monastery, we have something which says, metta is always the answer. So loving kindness is always the answer. Okay, friends, we're out of time, so I'll have to go. So I hope you have a good morning. I hope you have a good day, good practice, good week, and that you can implement and practice and make these Brahma Viharas a basis for your life and for your mind to beautify your heart and help other beings around you. So may you be well, happy, peaceful, safe wherever you are. And we will see you tonight for Friday evenings monk chat if you're there. May you be well and happy.